And everyone, if you've got a question after, we'll ask some of these, but feel free to unmute yourself. And this is a free-flowing sort of opportunity. So I'll maybe call on folks once we get through a few of the questions. But good morning or good afternoon, and welcome to our live Ask the Expert program. This is a program that was developed as a joint initiative, and I would say Greg DeRocher from the Cambridge Chamber and myself take no credit for it. It's our staff who are the ones that said we should do this. We think it's a great idea. The goal is to help you get access to the government fund or programs for cash flow support to help your business to survive and be ready to once we're on the other side of the pandemic. So I want to introduce and thank my good friend Tim Sothern. He is a partner with BDO here in the Kitchener office. And we appreciate Tim taking time out of his busy schedule. BDO is a great partner of both the Cambridge Chamber and ourselves. He hosts or is one of our sponsors of Business to Business on 570 News. And so we have him on as a regular panelist. But Tim has been the managing partner of his office. And as I say, one of his claims to fame is that he is a past finance chair of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. So he kept me in line for a number of years early in my career. We've got some questions that have come in from some of you listening in and from others that I'll maybe go through with Tim. But maybe just to start, before we get started, wanted to point out to folks that, and we're going to post this on our Chamber Check website, is some frequently asked questions around the stay-at-home order that was announced, I guess, on Wednesday and Thursday, and there's been some confusion. Greg and Lisa from the Cambridge Chamber have done a great sort of 2 or 3 pager on some of the answers. So that'll be available on this website. Feel free to share it with your friends and colleagues. It does answer some of the questions around, what's essential services and who can go where when, which is important. But I think the thumbnail is, if you heard the Premier, is and why they're making this decision is the spread of COVID is spreading far too fast, and it's putting our healthcare and our hospitals at risk. And so this is really meant to try and get folks to stay at home whenever possible. I guess that's the thumbnail there. But while they're asking us to do that, Tim, and many businesses, that affects many businesses and their ability to do work. And I think one of the things that, as we've talked about in the past, is there are a variety of programs for the federal government. You've got the bank loan program, the Seba program, the wage subsidy program, the new rent program. There are provincial programs as well that help you with your taxes and your utilities. There's a new one being announced, I think tomorrow, is that what we're told, the provincial grant program, which is available to most small businesses of up to 10,000, in some cases 20,000. So all of these programs together are important for people to understand and say it's not just one. You should be applying for all of them to try and get as much support as you can for your business. When in many cases, even if you're open for curbside pickup, it's going to be a fraction of what your business would be. So I guess the first question, then I'll go into some of the detailed questions, Tim, is that the type of advice you're giving for especially your small business clients, like your small entrepreneurs that you're working with, is, apply for these, go through maybe some aggravation in getting in initially, but once you're in, it's a lot easier to.
Yeah, you hear me okay, Ian?
Yeah, all good.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Our advice to our clients is to take advantage of all of the programs wherever you can. Initially, especially the wage subsidy program, that was very difficult, very painful. A lot of small businesses don't have online access with CRA, and just getting that piece of it set up was a difficult proposition. That part of that has really gotten streamlined. I think CRA has done a good job of that. And once you're online and you have your access, both the emergency wage subsidy and the new emergency rent program are in there on big flashing lights, basically, to click here to start filling out the requisite spreadsheets or questionnaires that are going to be required for you to be eligible for those programs. So I definitely encourage. I have some clients that have said, well, I don't really maybe need the money right now, and they're having a little bit of crisis of conscience. But at the end of the day, my advice to them is the government has put these programs in place not only just to help you today, but also to give you a springboard out of COVID. So you may not need those funds this month, but you might need them next month, and we don't know how long the programs are going to last.
And I think that's an important point to make, and I would reinforce getting you and your small business registered with CRA online, because a lot of this can't happen unless it's online.
Absolutely.
And so that should be the first thing that you do and it can be a bit of a pain in the ass, but you should get that done, because that's the way you're going to be able to apply for these programs. The second thing is whether it's the loan program or whether it's through the banks, through your bank, or these other programs, that you should be taking advantage of them. Because I mean, what we're finding now with this lockdown, Tim, is this is going to be another period of months, 3, 4, 5 months before we're kind of seeing the other side of the pandemic, and you don't know what your business needs are going to be 2 or 3 months down the road if we're still into either red or lockdowns.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right, Ian. They and again, the programs are in place to support all business and small business, and it's just critical to make sure that you're aware of the programs, and then B, that you're again registered with CRA, with their online portals, because I'll tell you, the wage subsidy program has evolved. It's complicated now, but I got to give the government credit. They put in kind of dummy proof spreadsheets into their system, sort of thing, that says enter here your wages, and then these super spreadsheets do all the calculating for you. So it's really hard to make a mistake in terms of it, because they've locked off everything else. So again, it might seem a little daunting the first time, but will be well worth it.
Okay. So listen, we've got some questions that did come in, and one of the questions was, our company has only 3 salaried employees but is a corporation. Would they still qualify for the small business grants or as a small business?
I'll assume here that we're talking about the wage subsidy, rent subsidy, when they're talking about grants. Yeah, absolutely. It goes down if you have one person for the wage subsidy that is employed, that can be eligible for the grant. And I must add, it could include your own wages. If you have a corporation, you paid yourself wages. Now there's caps, and there's it can't be unreasonable, and that's built into the spreadsheets. The government will ask you, are you a related party? Are you do you own the business? That type of thing. But yes, you would be eligible if you meet the revenue criteria in terms of the revenue comparisons. Have you dropped in revenue within the given thresholds that the government has?
And I think it says small business grants, but I think it's important. It doesn't matter that you're a corporation. You can be a sole proprietorship or a small business, unincorporated, incorporated. It is the revenue drop, and whether you're employing people, paying rent, and have business expenses. I think those are the criteria. It's less the type of business you are, it's the size. There are thresholds. Maybe explain that, where the thresholds are for some of these programs in terms of what small and medium size is.
Yeah, I guess a couple of things. First is for the wage program, you need to have a a payroll account with CRA, right? And so you need to have been paying those wages. For the rent subsidy program, the new program, it's kind of divided into two pieces. One is if you're renting, if you're leasing a premise for your business, and you're paying payments pursuant to that lease, those amounts would be eligible. Now, for if you're maybe a little bit of a larger business and you might own your own building, if you're using that in the use of your business, it's not, in that case, you're not renting it, but you're owning it. The costs of that building itself, property taxes, mortgage interest, those are eligible for the rent subsidy.
So that was the next question, is that someone says, I own my own building, any relief for property taxes? I think there is relief for property taxes and utilities from the province. There's a small program that the province of Ontario already has up and running. But I think this is what you're getting at, in their new rent relief program, some of the costs, maybe not all, but some of those costs would be eligible. And maybe talk through that a little bit, what that might look like.
Yeah, so basically, I'll kind of read it here, but property owners who use their property in the course of their entity's ordinary activity. So if you use it as part of your business and you own it, can also claim a rent subsidy. Kind of weird because you're not paying rent, but that's how the government talks. Yeah. Expenses incurred in that include mortgage interest, insurance on the property, property taxes. Now, one important thing to note here, if you're a landlord and you own a building and you're renting out, the rent, this does not apply to commercial landlords. So you can't if you have a property you're renting out, you can't go claim their wage subsidy. They're looking at this for businesses that own their own property or businesses that rent and lease a property. Okay. And the amounts basically can be up to $75,000 per location. So it's significant bucks if you can get if you're eligible.
And I guess I'm going to keep asking this question because one of the challenges that we hear is particularly for small business operators, which is most of business fall into that, 5, 10, 15 employees, right? Where the owner, yep, or the one or two senior folks are doing everything. This can be complicated. There's nothing ever easy about interacting with government, but this is easier than most, and it's worth taking the time to go through and get it right the first time, because once you've got those things in place, you'll know what you need for the next period, and they do have 4-week chunks. But once you get in, the deposits are coming directly into your bank account, et cetera. It is a lifeline because it does provide that cash flow support. So that's what we're encouraging, to ask experts like yourself, work with your bookkeeper, your accounting firm if you need to get in that first time, because that's the most difficult one.
Yeah, and that's where I advise clients, like they'll often send me, especially if it's their first time, does this look right? Here's what I'm about to click submit. Does it look? I kind of check the revenue numbers, check that, get that checked out kind of the first time. Once you've got the hang of it, it will be like rote, and you can do that fairly easily. But yeah, get some help, a second pair of eyes before you click submit that first time, for sure.
So, and this would not be unusual. Someone when my restaurant closed, I pivoted to provide culinary therapy. It's a second sort of social work business, but it hasn't had much revenue in the last 3 years. With little income in 2019, I can't qualify for anything. Any suggestions for? And this is a challenge. I mean, that's a particular circumstance, but if you're a new business and don't have comparative years, that's been a big problem for those that have just started new businesses. So maybe start with the initial question, and then we can come back to that broader one.
Yeah, they've certainly tried, and I believe I haven't had that specifically with a client in terms of new businesses. But if you're a new business that started pre-pandemic, January, February of 2020, there are alternative approaches. Instead of comparing to last year, you can compare to your average revenues from January and February of last year, so a year ago at this time. And that's called the alternative approach. And the good thing with the new rent subsidy program is they mirrored what they've done with wage subsidy, which is a smart thing. It was what we were calling for them to do at the beginning. Is align those programs, because you're helping the same folks, just with different expenditures. So definitely take a look at what you did in January, February, pre-crisis. And that is a way to keep applying for these programs.
Okay. And if people have specific questions around that, I think that there are, and as part of on the Chamber Check website, I think we also have provided all the links to these programs, and there are phone numbers, 1-800 numbers for many of these programs, whether it's CRA or the provincial government. If you're running into some roadblocks, reach out to us at the Chamber. We can help. Folks like Tim and others have offered to help us guide people to where they get the right answers, or those 1-800 numbers, because then the government's certainly aware that they need to be answering questions and getting people through the roadblocks, because it's in everyone's interest for people to get access to the resources and these programs as they can, so that we have as many businesses that are, as you say, Tim, ready to hit the ground running. And the recovery is going to be led by the private sector. It needs to be. And we need to have companies with employees and ready to do business when we get out of that. So, okay. Any results from the latest round of RRRF monies? I don't know, rent. That's the rent relief program, Brett.
Okay, is that the first one? Sorry, I'm not familiar with that acronym, but
I think that's referring to the rent relief program.
Well, okay. So just as an aside, we've talked about rent subsidy. The very first program that came into play was called the SECRA program, Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance, I think was the title for that. That was the program that was put in place, and it was run through the landlords. So the landlords had to apply for the relief measures, and then apply that relief to the commercial tenants. In my estimation, that program of all of them was just a big failure, because you didn't get enough take up from the landlords, and the relief wasn't coming through to those tenants. The government recognized that. A lot of folks like the Chamber of Commerce advocated that this wasn't getting to the intended target, and that's when they changed over to the emergency rent subsidy program, which is what we're referring to now. So if you're the SECRA program, if you weren't eligible, or if your landlord didn't offer it, you were out of luck. The rent subsidy program now is more within a business's control to go ahead and apply.
Yeah, and I actually just pulled up, I think actually RRF, because I wasn't familiar. It's the regional relief program.
Yeah, that's the FedDev Ontario one. Yeah.
FedDev Ontario one.
That's what I thought so.
Okay.
I'm not as familiar. I don't know. That's not one I've had a lot of experience
with.
And
maybe Art, maybe you have a little bit more on that, because I haven't had many clients go through that.
That was just an additional funding program that FedDev Ontario put in place, because of course FedDev Ontario is a part, it's separate from Canada Revenue Agency and
absolutely.
other federal departments that have been administering programs. But FedDev Ontario has a mandate to support economic development in Southern Ontario. So they put this in place. I think April, May, probably May, I think it was effective. And it's just an additional funding source. It's not huge. It's not the size of some of the other programs that are in place. And I think the FedDev Ontario, and I think the MPs locally and across Ontario have been saying, here's an additional source of funding. I think they kind of want to gear it more to the innovation side, but it is there, I think, for anyone.
Okay, and I think, so I don't think we've got a lot of context on that, but whoever asked this question, we'll dig in. Art and I can dig in a little bit about that. And I see Gregory DeRocher has just joined us. Maybe on Tuesday, we'll give an update on that. because it does say there's up to $40,000. I'm not entirely sure. But they put some of these in place if you didn't qualify for the rent relief program.
Yeah.
If you didn't qualify.
Very targeted, very targeted.
Very
Sorry,
targeted. If you didn't apply, get approved for some of the other programs.
Sorry, can I just jump in? It's Roger
Sure.
from the Cambridge Hotel. The RRF program is actually $1.5 billion nationally, and it's for smaller businesses up to 40,000. But
Yeah.
larger businesses can get an interest-free loan for up to 5 years with no payments for till 2023, up to $500,000. And that was done the first round. And the second round is another up to $500,000. So it is quite lucrative, especially if it's interest-free and payments aren't due till January 2023.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
so similar to the Seba program, basically, like in terms of those kind of
no
terms,
interest.
just big. Yeah, that Seba program's the same thing. No interest on that.
and there's a forgivable portion, but I think as Roger was just talking there, I think that's for larger businesses, like up to 40,000, and then some of those loan programs are for larger businesses, but they're loans as opposed to some of the grant programs, like the Seba program. 10 of the first 40 was, or whatever it was, 10 of the first 30 was forgivable,
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. So, okay, what we'll do is, because that's good information, and we want to share, get first up on what some of these programs are. It's not one that we've had a lot of questions about, honestly. If there's those types of funds, particularly for companies that need that kind of that level of support, we'll maybe do a little bit of homework on that, and Gregory can share that on Tuesday on the next edition of Ask the Expert. Okay, maybe I'll just see if anyone. I've got a few more questions here, but I see we've got 5 or 6 folks here. Anyone want to chime in, or should I keep going? And
no, I'd like to say something. I actually have asked a question, and I received the RRF. And I'm a small business.
Mhm.
The reason I applied was because I could not get the Seba loan because I didn't have a bank account at the time.
Okay.
So they gave me the RRF instead, and we were given about $27,000, and there's a six and change that I get to keep as a grant.
Yeah.
So it is available, and it's fairly easy to get. The information was fairly easy to do, but I didn't have a bank account. And my question that I sent in is about it. And I don't know if you can tell me this, but can I apply for Seba now that I do have a bank account after I've already gotten some of their money, the RRF?
It looks to me, just with a quick look up, that it was really targeted for those entities that could not get Seba. So
Right.
I would imagine, because they've mirrored it a little bit more, that that they probably don't want you double dipping, but that or it's not really a double dip. Everybody needs help, but they may want those programs to run in parallel and not intersect. But it would certainly be worth digging into that a little bit more, just to make sure. But I don't have the answer to that one.
I think the thing to do would certainly be, if you have a bank account now, I presume you have a bank account now, go to your financial institution, because I was just talking with the vice president of Scotia yesterday, Rebecca, and they have been calling all of their clients, especially small business and those that would qualify, and say, have you applied for the second round? And in some cases, those that didn't even the first time, of saying you should go through the application. The bank will know specifically, whoever you're dealing with, or your credit union, whoever it is, and say, I got the regional RRF.
Yeah.
And they'll be able to tell you, no, since you're in there, you got to stay there, or no problem, because you'll only be able to max out the second tranche. It gets you another,
It's another 20.
Another 20 grand, right?
And that's all I'm looking for, actually, is the
Yeah.
other. You don't expect to get anything more than that.
Well, I think it's a good point. Why don't you, get in touch with because that should be a pretty easy answer for them, which is,
Okay.
I've got this, I got that. If there's any confusion on their part, come back to us. Let Greg or I know, or our team, or put a question in, because this is part of the reason we're doing this. We'll dig in and get the answers to that. And I think there was 2 or 3 programs which we haven't seen as much of, but were specifically designed when they identified in, I don't know, Greg, in April or May, when they said, well, so-and-so doesn't qualify because they don't get a bank account. So they just created new programs to try and get that money out the door fast.
Right.
So
Okay.
some of this will be, that was in place then. There may, they may want you to stay there or not, but they will want people to get, and I hear this when I'm on my calls with Ottawa every Wednesday and Friday, Tim. They want to get money out the door. They realize this is really important time for business. So thank you for raising that, Mary, and come back to us and let us know whether what your experience would be, because that helps us inform.
Absolutely. Yeah, because there were a few clients that fell through the cracks, especially in the early Seba program where they could not qualify. They didn't have a payroll account. They farmed out their payroll to somebody else who had a payroll account, and that left them out in the cold. Now a lot of that's been, some of that stuff's been subsequently changed or updated by CRA. But no, that's good to know.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll let you know.
Yeah, and that actually was our circumstance, because we had the city of Kitchener doing our payroll. It took us months to get access to the wage subsidy program for the chamber itself.
Yes.
So they've been trying to fix some of these things because it's very difficult to get it right on the first time. Next,
these stories as well, Ian, I apologize for cutting in, but these stories, Mary, are really, really important for us, because while the government has more or less said to us, the programs are as they are, end of story. You're going to get what you get. There is momentum being built around the Canadian Chamber and other business leadership in the country, where some of these stories are telling a tale of cracks that can be easily refilled. And so when we get those stories, we pass them on to our counterparts at the national level, and they actually get on the desk of the Prime Minister and the decision makers. So please don't forget to send us those stories by email to Ian or myself. We'll make sure that they get there and that your story is told to the Prime Minister.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. Is, as I say, I'm on a call with the Ministry of Finance folks in Ottawa once or twice a week.
Yeah.
And I think Greg's right. There's not going to be any great big new programs, but they're going to try and refine the ones they have. And as Tim's been alluding to, trying to make sure they have fixes. But the example that you have are the types of things that if there's a crack, we can take those stories, and those are the things they'll try and fix to try and make sure that people aren't excluded for what amount to small administrative issues. But there won't be new programs, so it's important to take advantage of the ones we have. Dana, you were going to jump in?
Yes, Roger has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, I'm being a very bad host here. Sorry, Roger, you go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So this question is primarily for Tim, I think. In reference to it's great that the wage subsidy and the rent subsidy programs have co-terminating periods, but because of the 4-week time lapse, it's moving the deadline further and further away from the month end, which many businesses run on. So what we find now is that we need to wait an additional 2 weeks before the month ends to declare our revenues, to determine what the revenue level and the subsidy level is. Is the government looking at realigning that so that we adjust closer to the end of the month rather than to wait 2 weeks or 3 weeks until the month ends, and then we can determine what the revenue level is and what subsidy level is available?
It's a great question, Roger, because essentially everything kind of started on based on when the crisis. I guess it was officially a crisis in the government's eyes, which was mid-March of 2020, and everything kind of just started from there. I have heard nothing about them trying to change those dates and align them on a regular monthly calendar, which would be a lot simpler. In hindsight, I think they could have started and just kind of cut off at the end of March and then moved it on to a monthly calendar so that it fit with everyone's books. But the way I'm seeing the way I'm seeing all of these programs kind of come out, they're still cutting off at very unusual, I'd say unusual times, like just looking at the rent subsidy program, period 10 went from November 22nd to December 19th. There's no rhyme or reason, for that. And yes, now you're waiting on the previous month's items. No, we have not heard that. I think that's actually a good one, maybe Ian and Greg, to kind of just jot down in terms of a real problem as far as a cash flow timing issue that can go up to the government.
And I guess if I could just jump in, because this program now goes till the end of June,
2022, or
and
2021.
So 21. Yeah, but basically now, by the time May hits, we're going to be payroll for April, but we have to declare May's results. So we're waiting a whole month before we can submit because of the timing issue.
And I have heard this on the calls, and usually there's 70 to 80 people from across the country on with Minister Eng's office and Minister Freeland's office or staff. Roger, if you don't mind sending something in just to describe that, because one of the things that is helpful is when it comes from an actual business, and I on my call say, Roger from so-and-so said such and such, and here's the practical thing. They kind of, their ears perk up. They may kind of wave it off if they think, oh, the partner at BDO or the president of the chamber is full of shit. Excuse my French, he's making it up. But when it's Roger from the business that's being affected, they tend to pay attention to it. So, and it doesn't have to be long. I don't need War and Peace. I need a paragraph that I can read and say, feel free to follow with Roger directly, but here's the issue, and here's how it practically affects his business, and what it's going to mean at the for payroll in sort of April, May, June. That would be really helpful, and I promise I'll take that. I think on my next call's on Tuesday morning with the folks in Ottawa, so I'll happy to do that, and then I can report back on Tuesday afternoon or next Thursday once I've get any feedback to either Greg on Tuesday or I can report back on Thursday next week. So that's very helpful.
And I have one other question. I hope I can ask that question.
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely.
It relates to the Ontario COVID Energy and Property Tax Grant. So I guess specifically because we operate a hotel, when we heard Premier Ford saying there's $660 million to be applied for, no businesses applied for it, just some feedback, I guess. Because we're a hotel, because the hotel is still essential services, we're allowed to be open, but our restaurants cannot. So the convoluted process, and it really echoes what you said, Tim, that sometimes you have to jump through hoops because we had to get the square footage of the restaurant and the convention facilities, which are closed, and take that as a proportionate share of the total square footage of the hotel, not the ground floor, but every floor, which amounted to only 9%. And then we get a portion of that electrical bill credited back to us. So our property tax as well. So essentially, we got about $1,000 back for a month usage. So a couple of things with that. When this benefit, I guess for the property tax, we get that monthly because that doesn't change. With the energy part, they say we have to upload our actual bills. So of course, we know our bills are read at some point in time, the meter read, and then we submit them. But that's already 2 weeks after it happened, and then we have to submit it again because it's not repetitive. The bill, we have to do it every month. So we're seeing a time lag of anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks before we even see the first dollar. I just want to ask the question, is that typical? And is there a better way? Is there any thought process at making it a better, more efficient way of doing it?
Well, it's certainly 4 to 6 weeks is actually rapid fire for government in terms of this, and it's a bit of facetious, but it is. I do have to give them props on the responsiveness after the initial turn. They've been turning around funds pretty well. Just looking again at this system where I'm just taking a look at some of the options here where you do have to upload all of your invoices for proof of costs. I have not heard them say anything in terms of moving that, changing up that program. I would imagine it's probably not a priority right now in terms of, from a government perspective, they got it in place people can submit and the like. You know, from their perspective, I think they view it as a temporary program, so they may not be putting a lot of investment in to try to make that any quicker. Yeah, I don't think I've got any good news for you on that, other than, again, Ian and Greg are very good at putting these on the ground, boots on the ground stories to their local members of parliament and the folks at finance to try to outline these problems. So this would be another good one to send on to them.
Yeah, and I think, go ahead, Greg.
I think as well, Roger, yes, there is a better way of doing it, but government can't do it. So,
Okay.
and unfortunately, that's where the money's coming from. But I think, you know, based on that, and I'm just going based on the information that you just shared with us, I think part of the problem is your energy bill could be different every single month. So,
Right.
you know, the unfortunate part might be, it might not be the government situation so much as it is your energy provider. And there may be opportunity for you to get, you know, some real time or some, you know, faster response, even if it's a digital copy of your energy invoice for the month a little quicker, and then you can at least get it uploaded. But I think, you know, in reality, they have to make it fair and equitable, and they can't average it, and they're trying to be as specific as they possibly can. So, you know, they have to wait until you submit the bill, and if it takes time to get that invoice from your energy provider, it's going to delay everything, of course.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah, I appreciate that. The other interesting thing, it's one grant, but there are two provincial offices we had to deal with in order to get this grant through. One for the property tax and the other for the utilities. Again, two separate people, making it more cumbersome. If anything, if I can say, the federal government's been very good in terms of being responsive and making it simplistic. The Ontario programs, certainly less lucrative and more administratively complicated.
Yeah, and a part of that is that Ontario's just not used to doing this kind of stuff, right? Most of that relief is usually come from the federal government. But point well said. Sorry, Ian, I cut you off there.
Yeah, no, I just think while Roger, you're writing the 2-paragraph one on the other program, do one on this as well, because this one is that we can certainly take to the provincial MPPs, and we're obviously in touch on a number of different reasons with the new Minister of Finance and other things. This would be important for them to know, because when it was announced, it was supposed to be pretty simple, right? You know, give us your bills, and it's not. The other thing is that we were told, and you're explaining to me that it's not what they described was anyone in red or gray zone, which is lockdown, would be eligible for it, and there was not the indication that if you were essential service and could be open, because it ultimately rests on everyone's business is down, virtually everyone's business is down. So if you don't mind, send us a quick note just on that one, because that one I'll take to the provincial folks and say, you know, while it's in place for the next 6 months, make it, you know, simplify it.
Right.
I think the other part that so if you don't mind doing that, Roger, that'd be helpful.
We'll do. Yep.
Tomorrow, I'm told, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, or Tim, we expect that the Ontario Small Business Grant Program is to be, the portals to be open. That's what I think I heard today, is that's the idea, is that it's going to open tomorrow. They allege that it's going to be simple, particularly for
5
small
questions.
5 questions, they said. So everyone should stay tuned for that. We will, I think Allison's on the phone, or was on the phone with us. As soon as that's announced, we'll send an update out with the link, because that is going to be really critical, because it's a grant, it's a full grant. And the sooner you get it, the sooner you're going to get that. I think it's 10 grand for most businesses. A little larger, you can go up to 20, but it's really geared towards small, medium-sized business. So I don't know, is that what you're hearing, Greg?
Yeah, that's exactly what absolutely what I'm hearing, for sure.
And Allison, maybe go, and then I'll come back to Tim. There you go.
I haven't heard anything today from the government, but yeah, as soon as it's announced, we'll go out. If it's announced tomorrow, we'll send out an update. If it's not tomorrow, then we'll send it out as soon as it is.
Yeah, and with the link and what people should do. But Tim, that
Yeah.
the promise of that one is that it is supposed to be simple to get, much unlike what Roger's described, and it's a full grant.
Yeah, the criteria I'm seeing here is fewer than 100 employees and a minimum of 20% revenue decline. Basically from an April to April basis. So much more simpler than where we were with the wage subsidy program. So yeah, for small businesses, this could be a really big help.
Roger, can I ask you a question about the tax? Because you're the first person I've actually talked to that has applied for it. Well, at least, I know lots have applied for it, but nobody's ever got back to me on it. And here you are talking about it. My understanding was that if you're in a red and gray, as Ian suggested, in lockdown, you qualify for it. And it was based on a revenue decline, not on what was open and what was closed. Because I know there are small retailers who have applied for it. They've not come back to me and said I didn't qualify because I was still open. We were in the red zone, and they were, restaurants in particular, when we were in red, they went down to an occupancy of 10 patrons. So they were in essence legally still open, but they still qualified for the rent.
On the Ontario program, unfortunately, the way it's set up, it doesn't allow you to select multiple areas. So it's either it's either restaurant, convention, and it says specifically hotels, because you're essential services, you can't qualify for it.
Yeah.
So it's
ridiculous.
only the portion cost.
Yeah.
And the other piece of it is of course, it's based on the lockdown date. So we know in KW, we went into a red zone on November 23rd. So our billing doesn't happen on November 23rd. So they prorate it as well. So if anything, it keeps on getting reduced based on your pro rata square footage, based on the lockdown date, and then it's delayed. So I can tell you, I spent more time on this grant for a couple of $1,000 than I have for the wage subsidy.
That's ridiculous. Ian, that's maybe, Roger, we need that information is really important.
And actually write it that way, Roger, because then I'll amplify it by being even more indignant than you are, saying you want this guy to spend this many hours for $2,000. If you're trying to help them, simplify, because those are the stories that are actually very helpful. And I think they could respond to those, because if they simplified the new one that's coming, they can simplify this one. If they're really trying to help out with rent and utilities. So,
and I can tell you, for instance, the other thing is to mitigate it. In order to get the right square footage, I had to go back to our architect, get them to draw up the right drawings with the right, and I had to spend money to get that amount to get the $2,000.
Well, Roger, send me 2 relatively poison pen letters. I'll make sure I amplify them so they're really poison pen when I share them with the appropriate authorities. Listen,
Perfect.
one more question, and I'm going to open it up to Mary or Oliver. There's a few other people on the line here. I was wondering if restaurants are eligible to file for the lockdown support portion of CERS. Is that?
That's the rent subsidy.
Oh, the rent subsidy. Sorry. During the time we were allowed to only have 10 people in the restaurant. I think the answer to that is
it won't be about the amount of people allowed in the restaurant. It'll all be about your revenue comparators with that.
Yeah, and I think on that one is once the new program was announced and passed, it just starts on that day, and you're still subject to.
That's right. That's right.
It's the provisions that are in the rent program, which I think has some revenue loss, but it's much simpler, and it doesn't require the landlord. It's you apply for it, but it has nothing to do with the lockdown, whether you're in red zone or gray zone, because it's that one's a federal program, and you apply through the federal government. Is that fair?
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
And Ian, I just want to add something. As we were talking, I went into the Ontario Small Business Grant, and it's allowing me to apply.
Oh, it is
right
so it's
now.
live.
So I think it's live. It's I already went through and just clicked a few things, and now I'm in the application page. So I think we're good to go there.
Okay, Tim, make sure you don't end up in jail if I falsely apply.
I didn't apply for anything, but I went through and it's got me to the application page. So
Okay, well, let's, I think Allison's listening in and Art, let's dig in. I was told it was tomorrow,
It's
but
at ontario.ca/COVID support.
yeah.
okay,
And it's a highlighted yellow banner right across the top of the page. And you just click on there and you can apply for funding right away.
you know what? It would be nice if they talk to their partners that have been waiting and asking questions about this
Well,
every day for about 4 weeks.
maybe they're really not ready. They just want to see what kind of activity.
I don't know. Well, you know, or they just, this is like hide and seek, right? Like, we'll just put it out there and see how many people actually
Find it.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I'll go to, I see Mary's asked a question. If Mary, or who else is there? Oliver, Rogers, Jennifer, as any of you have any questions, anything that's come up in the conversation, I'm happy to hear from you. Any brave souls there?
I think
Hi.
we're just.
Okay,
sorry.
there's Mary.
The only question I have after all of this is, anything you find, will you be putting it onto the chamber site also, or just here?
So we'll be doing two things. Partly the reason we do this is because I do Thursdays and Greg does Tuesdays. So we sort of share this site, as well as Chamber Check has some certification for safety for opening your business, etc.
Right.
But it'll be on this site. It will also be on both our websites, right? I'm looking at Allison and Greg. It will be, we have a page that's on our Greater KW Chambers.com. Greg has it on CambridgeChamber.com. So you'll find it in both places. We certainly will be putting it out by social media, as will Greg, our e-news and our regular updates over the course of the next several days. So you'll be able to find it any number of different places. We will, since it's I think that we said we'll post it on the chambercheck.ca site where you register for this, along with, because there's already a list, Greg, don't we already have the list of the programs and the links and everything else? So we'll add this one to that, so you know and can get direct access to that.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, was someone else trying to get in there?
Sorry, it's Roger again. I don't mean to cannibalizing the discussion, but Tim, you said it was live. I'm not seeing that on the website. I see the PPE one that was up already originally, but I don't see that. And when I link on the government site, it still says that it's coming.
Yeah,
Refresh your page, because if you go to ontario.ca/COVID support, you will see a banner. In January 2021, applications will open for the new Ontario Small Business. You click on that link, and it will.
Is that the new one though, or is that the existing one? The one for.
This is the small business support grant.
Business support grants.
Yeah.
I'm following that, and I'm still seeing that it says coming soon, and I'm wondering whether that the business support grant and the PPE and the property taxes all one application process. So it's open for the other two, but I don't know that it's open for this yet.
Yeah,
I think they've got a messaging problem on their website here.
Yeah, it's interesting. We'll have to go through it, because maybe it is. Please visit. Yeah, it looks like it's live to me, but
okay. Well, I think what we'll do, folks, is I was told earlier today that it was tomorrow, but who knows with these things. The fact is, I think we appreciate Tim, and I think I think we're sort of at the end of our time and questions here. Once this program is released, it is, along with rent and wage subsidy and the bank loan program, is probably the thing that we want every business that is eligible to apply for, because it is a grant, and it will be helpful to most small businesses. So as soon as we know that it's live, we will be sharing that with everyone and posting it to Mary, to your point, on our websites, on the chambercheck.ca, and we'll talk about it next week on Tuesday. Hopefully, if it's up and running, Greg We'll take some time. I don't know, Dana may not still be with us, but I'm not sure who our expert is for next week. Oh, there she is. Who's our expert next Tuesday?
Noah Jensen and Ollie, also from BDO, are doing next week.
Okay, and then we'll have, I don't know who's with me on Thursday, but we'll have an expert. So a little bit of time asking questions. And I think what's really important is what are the, you know, how to apply, what are the pitfalls, and how do we get people access to those? Because that could be the most immediate part of getting some cash flow support. Okay.
And sorry, it is live. It is live, and it's under the same link as before.
Okay.
Terrific. Yeah. I was wondering what I was applying for. So
You know what? This is like,
where is it live though? I see.
You click on the existing link with the PPE, but then there's the next window comes up with radio buttons to not only select the PPE and the property tax, but now there's one for small business
Oh
support.
yeah, I see that here.
Right. So you have to go further.
yeah, we might want to encourage them to be a bit more obvious about where that button is.
Well,
this Greg, this is like when we break news on 570 News on business to business, right?
We do know that
all the
it
time.
takes about 6 to 8 weeks to get that button changed. So
Yeah, we'll need to know it. It's like the caramel secret. I say when you're applying, you know, shake your head twice and turn around and then sit down on your keyboard and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
So.
well, all I know is I can hear Roger applying for it as we speak. So do they.
Absolutely. I want to be first in line.
Listen, I want to thank everyone for joining us. I know this is we put this together in a matter of a few days. I expect that there'll be more people that will start to join this next week and in the coming days. Our partners at the Waterloo Economic Development Corporation, Communitech, the marketing and tourism folks, and people right across the community are helping to publicize this, because it is important to make sure that that as many businesses get access to our to these financial supports, these cash flow support programs. So to Mary and Roger and Jennifer and others that are listening in, please share, you know, if you found this useful, share it with your colleagues and ask them to encourage people to join us on Tuesdays and Thursdays. To Tim, always a good partner of both chambers. We appreciate all the support of BDO and him offering his time, and to everyone else that Dana and Lisa and the chamber staff and both chambers that have put this together. We're all in this together. We got to get through this, and I think this is an important opportunity for us to share information. And we won't have all the answers, but we want to get those and make sure that everyone can access the programs to make it through, you know, April, May, and to be on the the recovery side of the COVID. So